Hey everybody, welcome to your readings for the week. These are the readings for the week ending August 5th. Still in a Venus retrograde, of course. We've got about another month of that. No new retrogrades this week, so I guess that's something that's good that we can look forward to. Let's go ahead and hop on into those readings. We're going to start, of course, as we always do with Darcy, at least until we get some Aries on the list here. We always start with Darcy. Okay, so we've got all kinds of stuff going on actually this week because, of course, Uranus and Pluto are continuing to influence Taurus. Neither planet is going retrograde yet. That Uranus retrograde is coming up though, so but we're not quite there yet. I do believe it's coming up though this month. Uranus is focused on finances. Jupiter is focused on relationships. Honestly, to put these two together, this is really about your relationship with your finances and specifically the growth of your relationship with your finances. And it's kind of an interesting thing to look at in terms of having a relationship with your finances. It's really important that you do, because if you don't, money is just going to be a problem for you all the time. Just like human interaction, money is an energy and it's energy movement. And so we have a tendency to hinder the growth of our finances just by our mindset, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Now, Uranus continues to be in this grand sextile with Pluto and Neptune, both planets continue to be retrograde. And that grand sextile is going to continue on all week long, probably will be continuing for the next few weeks, actually, because these planets don't really move very quickly, especially Pluto, which has basically just been sitting in the same spot here for a really long time. Pluto's influence or Pluto's focus is on the home, while Neptune's focus is on your day-to-day schedule. So one of the things that sort of pops up with this for you is specifically maybe a side hustle or something like that that is considered working from home. I actually was talking to a client yesterday, about finances and about money and things like that. And she was saying that where she lived, there really wasn't a whole lot of opportunities. She lived in a place that apparently there just wasn't a whole lot going on there. And the beauty is that this day and age, especially after the pandemic, one of the good things that did come from the pandemic is a lot more work from home or remote opportunities. So places like I have it on good authority actually that Chewy hires mostly remote customer service representatives that are working from home and things like that. So it's not just about looking in your environment around you. It's also about expanding out to other possibilities as well that might actually work out for you by either supplementing your income or possibly providing some income that will replace the current income that you have, if that makes sense. We also have a grand trine between Jupiter. Pardon me. That was one of those I'm having the back something hit the back of my throat there and it was not pleasant. Um and that could go to a really dirty place. We're not going to go there. Right at the beginning of the week, we have a grand trine between Jupiter, Mars, and the moon, as the moon makes this a grand trine. Now, the trine between Jupiter and Mars continues all week long. Mars' focus is on those that support you. Jupiter's focus, of course, continues to be on relationships, and the moon's focus in this grand trine places that we're kicking off the week really is focused on your mind and how your mind works. So this is actually really interesting when we're talking about relationships, the supportive ones versus the not so supportive ones, because we all have relationships in our lives that we hash out so much support to these people, but they give very little back. And I feel like on one hand, this is absolutely true. This is absolutely true for a lot of different relationships, but not always. Sometimes it's all in our heads, if that makes sense. Like either we are not giving the support that we think we are, we're sort of, kind of telling ourselves a story, or the fact that they weren't there to support you one time is causing you to go to this place where you're amplifying you're upset over it. So it's not just this person was unavailable this one time, but you're creating a story that says that this person is consistently unavailable. At the same time, though, looking at this from a very different perspective, there is kind of an instance coming up for you, I feel, where this person that you may be reaching out to you to at this time could be a very supportive person normally, but they're moving on to something else. And therefore, their support for you is lessening. And this may cause a little bit of an emotional reaction, if that makes sense. However, this is something that's good for them, and people need to move on and do their thing just as much as we need to move on and do our thing at the same time. So I've kind of been all sides of this scenario here, and it's actually very interesting to look at it from an outside perspective, because yes, I've been in the position where the people that should be there to support me are not, especially the people that are quote unquote legally required to be supportive are just, they're not, but I've also been in the position of being a tremendous support system for someone who I just cannot be a support system for anymore for whatever reason. And there's like a million reasons why. Either I'm too busy, there's just an element of I've tried to help a million times. It's not helping, it's enabling. So I'm backing off my energy there a little bit. And that's really an interesting thing when that's happening to you, because it gives you an opportunity to really look to see, honestly, what it is that you're doing. So basically, I feel like this grand trine is just kind of sort of, basically amplifying this feeling of that a lot of people go to, I think especially women, and Taurus women are definitely no exception to this, that when someone's not there for you when you need them, we have this amplified, overly emotional reaction. And when I talk myself through that, and I'm able to come to a place where I realize that this person is normally very supportive, they're just not available right now, right this minute, or they can't do specifically what I want them to do, but they could be supportive in other ways. Yes, we all have emotional reactions like that. The whole key to growth is to not lash out emotionally because you're having the emotional reaction, but to learn from the reaction, to understand where that comes from. Why are you amplifying it so much? Chances are it's coming from a very deep place, and a place that, or a circumstance that took place a long time ago, if that makes sense. And you have to separate those two, because it's not necessarily the same thing. And if it is the same thing, then you have to make a different decision. One of the other things that I am being shown for you this week, because of course we do continue to have a square with Jupiter and the Sun. The Sun's focus is on career. We also continue to have a square between Uranus and Venus, which is retrograde, and of course your ruling planet. So this Venus retrograde is definitely going to affect you in some way, shape, or form. Venus's focus is on your support system. So that lack of support thing is coming up again. So I find that, first of all, I just have to say this, okay? You're a badass woman, okay? I know you're a badass woman. You work hard. I get it. You probably don't want to anymore. I totally understand that one and can sympathize with it and agree with you 100%. But the thing is that a lot of women that I've noticed that are like you, that are very independent, that take care of their own shit, that pay their own bills, that call all the shots, they're also running around going, I just want a man. I just want somebody to take care of this. I just don't want to do this anymore. And the thing is that while it seems like an easy choice, it is not an easy choice, and it's not necessarily a great choice either. For women these days, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. We have to be able to walk on our own 2 feet. I have a husband who's wonderful. That does not mean that he's not going to turn into a jackass tomorrow or something horrendous happens to him tomorrow. And I'm stuck on my own. And if I can't stand on my own 2 feet, I'm in big, big, big trouble. And I don't want to be in big, big, big trouble. So you pretty much, it's all about when it comes to relationships, it really is all about choosing the right relationships that are symbiotic, where you're working together, but not necessarily looking for somebody who's going to replace you having to work, quote unquote, if that makes sense. And with Jupiter's influence on expansion of those relationships, I also feel like this week is one of those opportunities for you to take stock of your relationships, to make sure that they're in the place that you would like them to be, that you need them to be, that they're working like a well-oiled machine, and look at the ones that aren't, because the ones that aren't are what's kind of holding you back, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Darcy. And I am going to move on to my other Taurus, the lovely Kendra. Okay, continuing with Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus, although we have two different influences here. Jupiter is all about the power of expansion in terms of your relationships, while Uranus continues to be focused on finances. I think this is really interesting, actually, coming up for you right now with all the stuff that's been going on lately in terms of your career, we'll just say, and all the possibilities around your career. And Uranus continues that out of the box influence look at your finances. And so this is why this is so interesting to me, because honestly, in the last few weeks of us talking, you've been talking about your work. We're not going to name them, where you work, pardon me, the issues with that. And of course, your business is considered an out of the box idea because it's going against the general way of how we work, technically, although we're all moving into this out of the box weird place. But I think you personally are kind of sort of at the forefront of that, if that makes sense. It's like you're leading us all into this new realm, if that makes any sense at all, which is really kind of cool. Now, two things. One, we have a trine between Jupiter and Mars, and Mars is influencing our support system currently right now in Virgo. So, which is another earth sign, which is really cool. And I feel like this is not aggressive energy as much as it's ambitious energy. It's just like this huge boost of energy comes in to really focus on the expansion of those relationships. And we're not just talking about family, we're not just talking about friends, we're talking about building business relationships, we're talking about building clientele here. So there's a lot of energy going towards that. But even more so right at the beginning of the week, as the moon lines up into a trine with both planets, making this a grand trine. So this is like a massive energy going towards specifically what your goals and your plans are, if that makes sense. I'm so super stoked, by the way, that you reached out to Sherri and that you're going to talk to her, because she's fantastic. And I can't wait to hear all about it. So basically, this is a really good energy that's boosting you forward in your plans this week. And I feel like there's a lot of ideas that are going to be coming up around this as well. And I really feel that a lot of these ideas are coming from a very emotional place, because you're in the healing business to a certain extent. So this is taking the experiences that you've had and sort of creating something that's going to help other people with similar experiences. There's a lot of magic around this right at the beginning of the week. Also, we continue with this grand sextile between Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. Neptune is retrograde also. Neptune retrogrades are just a little bit different than other retrogrades. Neptune's all about intuition. And when Neptune goes retrograde, it sort of amplifies that intuition. And with Neptune's influence on your day-to-day schedule, this is actually kind of interesting to me. First of all, it opens up time for things like relaxation and meditation and being able to focus your energy in one direction instead of this constant, I've got a million ideas popping around in my head and you can't really seem to focus on one thing or another, if that makes sense. Pluto's influence is on the home. So when we're talking about finances and out of the box ideas for finances, this grand sextile feels like it's gearing you more and more and more towards working from home, which you already do, I get, in all of your businesses. But this is, again, more, we're putting more energy on your business and less energy on the job, if that makes any sense at all. We do continue to have a couple of little challenges here. Of course, Uranus is square with Venus, which is your ruling planet, is really the one that I want to talk about here. Venus, of course, being retrograde in Leo, still focusing on your support system. And I feel like because this is lining up with Uranus, which is focused on finances, it's going to feel more and more like the job is not financially supporting you, if that makes sense. So it is, I'm on a technicality, it is, but in the long run, it's actually just trying to suck the life out of you in some way, if that makes sense. So I feel like those issues might be a little bit amplified with this, but they're amplified for a reason. It's like literally you need the excuse to really put the energy into a different direction so that you're not having to rely on these people anymore, because that's really the ultimate goal, is to not rely on them anymore. There's also, I'm being shown another possible opportunity that's coming, that might be coming up for you this week in terms of a business relationship. So very similar to the lady that you were talking to that has her own establishment that wants to sort of bring yours in to kind of work symbiotically together. I kind of see another something like that coming up around you as well. So you're basically, okay, your guides keep saying, keep asking for help because it's working. Okay. Every day ask for help because it's working. And when I need it and I say I need the money, so if guides, if you could help send me the money, I get clients. It just happens. It's like magic and I love it. So keep asking, keep working with them, and they are going to keep sending you the people that you need, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you this week, Kendra. And we're going to move on to Jeannette. I do believe we're moving on to Jeannette. Yes, we're moving on to Jeannette. No planets in Gemini. We continue to have Vespa in your sign, and Vespa is focused on finances starting this week. So that's kind of cool, actually, because Vespa is the eternal flame that burns on the hearth. So it really symbolizes home. It symbolizes that comfort space, right? I always probably said this a million times to you already, but I always, when I think of Vespa, I think of being a child at my grandma's house staring at the fire. That was like, in my whole childhood, that was the place that I felt the most secure and taken care of, and nothing bad was going to happen to me, if that makes sense. So when we're talking about putting this influence into your finances, you did tell me that that paperwork was finally submitted, so that's good. Things are basically going in the right direction in terms of bringing you a little bit of financial security. So that's really a good thing, and I'm really excited about that. The other thing is that I feel like there are plans for your house. You have some plans for your house, some things that you want to add to the house, or and I'm not necessarily talking about building a second floor to the house or a third floor. Pardon me. This is more about improvements, upgrading appliances, changing the color, painting, different things like this that I feel are going to make this home even more of a home to you, and kind of sort of make it yours in a way, if that makes sense. So that's also something that's really good that you're working towards. What I do have to say, and one of the things that I am picking up very strongly actually, is to be very careful about how much money you're putting out there. So just make sure that not to say that you're not doing this, okay? But just to be on the safe side, make sure you're not overspending, because just because you don't see something coming up doesn't mean that something isn't going to come up. This happens like all the time. So, just because you have it doesn't mean that you should spend it. It's definitely always a good idea to write down a list of the things that you need so that you can check them off as you get it, rather than just arbitrarily going out and, oh, I see that and I need that, and buying it kind of a thing, if that makes sense. One last thing that I am being shown for you, and that is there's a lady in a rocking chair knitting back and forth, rocking back and forth. This is like probably the only time she ever sat, to be honest with you, because I feel like this woman was constantly up and moving and doing something, a lot like you are. But this is the only time she ever sat. This is when she was rocking in the chair, and it's like knitting or crocheting or something like that. She's maybe could even be sewing. I'm not really sure. The point is that she did this every single day. She had a long list of things to do, and of course did not have the conveniences that we have in order to get those things done. And she's just stressing the importance of sitting quietly for at least 10 to 15 minutes every single day. And that's hard for an air sign to do, because we have to have something for our brains to focus on, or it just goes like crazy different directions. So two things. One, you do your ground and bubble beforehand. It sort of helps slip you into a meditation, if that makes sense. And the purpose of meditation is to slow down your brain going in 20 different directions at once. So it sort of shuts down some of those browser windows that you leave open in there, so that you can refresh and maybe reboot your brain and start over, if that makes sense. The stuff that you need to do is not going to disappear. It's not going to go away. But this does kind of put you in a situation or a place where you can focus a little better. And I think this would really be good when you sit down in your crafting room, because you have so much stuff going on in there that it is so easy for you to get distracted from what you're doing. And this is such a Gemini thing, that you want to make sure you're working with it and it's not working you. And I think this is where the meditation and the quiet time is going to come in to help with that. So that's what I have for you, Jeannette. And we are going to move on to Connie. I only have the one Connie on this list, unlike yesterday when I did the live where there's just Connie mania going on in there. But I do love it. By the way, not to be rude to anybody, and I don't necessarily play favorites, but you are my favorite. I'm just saying, okay? I'm just saying, if I had to choose, okay? Don't tell the other one, though. She might get upset. Anyways, we have the sun in Leo continuing in your sign this week. We have Venus, of course, which is retrograde still and will be retrograde for another month or so. So we have that to talk about a little bit. We also have oh my goodness, Oh, ooh, that came out of nowhere. The Lilith or Dark Moon, which is also retrograde this week. And continues to be so all week long. So lots of stuff going on in here. The beginning of the week is pretty flipping crazy, I have to say. The sun is in opposition with Pluto. The sun's opposition with Pluto is a little bit of a challenge because it's sort of, the sun's influence is on your career and just being badass in your career. Pluto is like retrograde and is all about change and transformation. Retrograde means you can't change. It's like you're stuck in that same home place, right? So there's a couple of things coming up with that. One, we have to work on the fixed sign mentality of what home actually means. Now, for me, that means PJs, that means comfy clothes, that means slippers. And I basically don't get a whole lot done. Okay. If I put my shoes on, bam, I can be running around here doing all kinds of stuff, cleaning up, taking care of various different things that need to be taken care of, what have you. So I feel like part of this opposition is basically saying when you have work at home, this is where we're going here. When your work is at home, you got to get dressed, you got to put shoes on, you got to put yourself in the mindset of I'm working even though you're at home. This was like such a huge struggle for me for like years and years and years. I mean, I always tell people because they're always like, oh my God, working from home would be just so awesome. It is, but it's a struggle at the same time because you're literally struggling against your own your own schedule in your mind. It used to be I'd go to work, I'd do the work stuff, I'd go home, and then I could relax. And so home is a relaxed place. It's not a working space. So you have to do certain things in order to make sure that you create the right environment for that. The sun's square with Jupiter as we kick off the week is a little bit of a challenge as well. Jupiter is all about the expansion of your relationships, very close to that cusp of money, your financial relationships. So I feel like really this is about money more so than relationships and your relationship to money. It just feels like no matter how hard you try, you can't seem to make that money, or you can't seem, this is kind of something that you've been going through for the last few weeks. As we start moving, the sun moves out of these challenges, specifically the opposition with Pluto. That square with Jupiter is going to continue to stay. There's another element to that, actually, that I do want to kind of sort of just say something about really quick. And that is when you're working all the time, it's really hard to build relationships. It's really hard to build friendships. It's really hard to maintain them. It's really hard to go out there and look for new people to hang out with. Don't put so much pressure. You don't need 100 people to hang out with, and you don't need a ton of time to do it either. So maybe I think what the big thing is that's coming out of this is that you're telling yourself you just don't have time for people, but your heart really wants. So there's something that needs to be adjusted there in order for you to be open to the possibility of maybe finding new people to hang out with, if that makes sense. Now, Venus is going to continue with a square with Uranus. Now, Uranus is focused on finances, and Uranus is a very rebellious, sort of out of the box. We're going to go against the grain, and in a completely unique way, make our money, right? So we're not doing the same thing we've always done, which is hard for a fixed sign, honestly. And the weird thing about it is that Uranus is the planet of a fixed sign, so it makes no sense. But if you look at the sign, which is Aquarius, and if you don't know it is Aquarius, an Aquarius right here. Your sun's in Aquarius too. He doesn't make any sense. I don't make any sense, right? We weren't put here to make any sense. We were honestly here to shake things up a little bit. So sorry about that. But we need that shaking up a bit, because fixed signs get so stuck in this is how it is. We have to be yanked out of that. And being yanked out of that is uncomfortable and it's miserable and it's scary. And we don't know what that looks like. And so we don't want to move forward and yada, 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 yada. Bottom line here is Venus's focus is on your career. There's no love in your career. I mean, you can do what you love. That doesn't necessarily mean that you love what you do every single day either. So I feel like what's happening with this is that your vision of what you're doing becomes a little different this week. So instead of loving the fact that you're helping others, you're actually in a space where you're like, it's almost like you're looking at it in terms of, it's my job to help everybody else, but it's nobody's job to help me. And that's going to get in the way big time. Okay. So if this comes up, the best advice I can give about that is to take the time when you have the time to work through it, to understand where that comes from, and to put it to bed. Because honestly, being in that emotional space is not going to help you succeed in your career, basically, in a nutshell. Pretty much that's what's going on there. So is it complicated? A little bit. Yeah, it is a little bit complicated. The sun is in a trine right at the end of the week with the moon. That does help uncomplicate things a little bit and just opens up some space for you to be able to really kick some ass in your career and make some money, which is really what it's all about. So bottom line here is, no, this week is not a you can't make any money week. Absolutely not. That's never a thing. But what is happening is that it looks like you've got more challenges to deal with than you had before. You're railing against the challenges because you just want things to run smoothly. Guess what? Life doesn't work that way. We're all here. We're all learning the lesson. We're all dealing with the BS. And that's not going to go away, unfortunately. But you do have your great days, and you got to celebrate those great days. And the bad days, don't celebrate the bad days. Put more attention on the good and less attention on the bad. The more you do that, the easier it gets, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Connie. And I'm going to move on to Jenny. We continue to have the sun in Leo. Venus continues to be retrograde in Leo. The sun is going to kick off the week in opposition with Pluto, which is, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of a challenge. The sun's focus is on your career, so this is where you shine in your career. Pluto's focus is reversed on your home. So one of two things. One, I feel like there are things that are taking place at home that are making it difficult for you to focus on what you need to do at work. Kind of feels like you're being pulled in two different directions. Luckily, that's going to be done by the end of the week. However, the sun's square with Jupiter is a challenge that's going to continue all week long, because this is bringing up a challenge within the relationships of the places, I should say, that you work for. So in some cases, I feel like there's two things that come up with this. One, I feel like this involves a person that you're really trying really hard to be friends with, and it just doesn't seem like no matter what you do, it's just not good enough for them. And I don't think this has anything to do with you personally. I mean, it sure looks like it, I know, but I feel like this is less about you personally and more about the individual. So all I'm going to say is try not to take it too much to heart, if that makes sense, because you don't want this to take over your whole entire existence. You got more important things to focus your your mind on. The other thing that I feel might pop up around this is that you got so much to do. You're working so hard. You're working so much. You just don't have time for relationships. You don't have time for friends. You don't have time to spend with family, even if you want to spend that time with family. So it sort of creates this fear that everybody's just going to up and leave you because you don't have time for them. And that's not necessarily true either. This is a busy time, not necessarily like the end of any hope of connecting with other people, if that makes sense. It's just, it feels like it's a really busy week. When we get to that retrograde Venus, so Venus in retrograde focused on your career is kind of interesting, actually. We don't really look at love being a part of our job, but creativity we do. And I feel like there is some creative blocks that could be coming up specifically around money because Uranus is squared with Venus. So Uranus is focused on finances and really focused specifically on let's find an out of the box solution for those finances. So we're not just doing a regular savings account, we're doing a CD account, or we're doing hey, maybe even Bitcoin. I think that's crazy personally. I mean, I don't see the value in fake money, but whatever. I could be totally wrong and not know what I'm talking about. You probably would know better than I am. I feel like it's highly possible, actually, that investments that you're thinking of making just don't turn out to be the right avenue, if that makes sense. So if you are thinking about investing in something specific, but you have any kind of doubts in your mind, you might want to explore those doubts because they're coming up for a reason, if that makes sense. All in all, because Leo is so focused on work, I feel like this is really going to be your life this week. And I'm not entirely sure why. From what my knowledge is, it's not one of those busy tax times, but I could be really, really, really wrong because I have been before. But I just feel like this week, what is happening here, and there's a couple of different people that I feel are just going to make this like so much more difficult. Grounding and bubbling this week is definitely important so that you're not taking on other people's misery, other people's BS, other people being disorganized, all of that kind of stuff. You're really good at not taking on. I just feel like this week it might be a little bit more difficult than it normally is. So extra grounding and bubble, extra few minutes in your car meditating for a minute, maybe not in your car because it's hot as you know what. Go in the bathroom then if you can't do it in your car. It's these little things that really do make a huge difference in terms of a very busy and kind of crazy week, if that makes sense. And that's what I have for you, my friend. I will talk to you. Well, I'll talk to you later on this week, actually. We have an appointment later. So I'm looking forward to that. And we are moving on to Linda, my first Virgo on the list. We officially have Mercury in Virgo, which is getting ready to go retrograde at the end of this month. Of course, I believe it's the 23rd, 24th, something like that. We also continue to have Mars in Virgo. Now, here's a bit of an issue here. This is really something that I think is going to, if anything is going to be a challenge, this is definitely going to create it because we have Mercury and Mars in opposition with Saturn this week. Saturn is retrograde. So if Saturn is showing us what our responsibility is, when it's retrograde, it's reminding us to take on the responsibilities that do belong to us. It's also reminding us not to take on responsibilities that don't belong to us. I would say, in my knowledge of you, that's not necessarily something that you need to worry about. And yet at the same time, we all do it. And sometimes we do it without realizing that we're doing it. Saturn's focus is on those you love, and Mars and Mercury are focused on those who love and support you. So this is the challenge here. Of all the things that you've done for people, it doesn't seem to be coming back to you in the way that you would like it to. Maybe even seems like it's not coming back to you at all in some ways. And that's really, really frustrating. Now, what's really helpful at the beginning of the week is, well, all week long, Mars is in a trine with Jupiter. And Jupiter is all about the expansion and the growth of your relationship. So I feel like part of this has to do with various different projects or jobs that you are working with currently right now, is that you need to move to a place where you feel like you're being supported in some way. So you're not just sort of floating about by yourself, feeling like nobody gives a crap, if that makes sense. Also, right at the beginning of the week, the moon moves into join this trine. So it becomes a grand trine, and the moon's focus is on your mind. So I feel like a lot of ideas are coming up for you in terms of finding solutions to current problems that you're dealing with right now. I feel like while this is a good thing, it's an even better thing to write these ideas down, because not to say that you can't focus on one thing or another, or at one thing at a time. I know you can. The problem is that at this stage of your life with what you're going through, you don't want to take on more than you need to, because you already have a lot of things on your plate to deal with. So just make sure that you're not taking on projects that are just like, they seem simple enough, or you can do it. That doesn't mean that you should do it, if that makes sense. I'm also picking up on somebody trying to put more on you than you agreed to in the first place. And you know that if you accept that one time, they're just going to keep on doing it. So make sure that you're aware of that and kind of put the kibosh on that ASAP. That way it doesn't seem to be a reoccurring pattern with these people. The other thing that is interesting here to me is Mars and let me see, Venus. This is Venus. Mars, no, that's not you. Okay, so that was interesting, but it actually isn't, because it's not happening right now. So with that being said, it can feel like you're not being supported, not just in your career, but within your family. There's going to be some things that are coming up in the adjustments around the situation that you're in and getting yourself into a better situation. Bottom line here is that it's really important to make sure you're not overreacting when you don't need to be overreacting. I also feel that it's really important, especially I feel at the end of the day, to do a bit of a meditation to kind of release all the things that you have been through during that day, because you have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, the next few weeks are moving again. And so you've got the moving, you've got the movement of your husband, you've got, a new job, possibly, you've got another job, you've got all these different projects going on. We want to avoid you burning out. Okay, we need to avoid you burning out, because this is not just about you. Obviously, this is about your husband. He's lost without you at this point. So, but also for your own health, you got so many things going on and so many responsibilities. Last thing you need to do is get yourself sick. You don't have time for that, right? So, yeah, make sure that I think, good 10-minute meditation every night before you go to bed and every morning before you wake up is a great idea. We all should be doing it, because it helps us get focused. It helps us kind of sort of cut what we need to cut and not have to deal with that stage where you have 50 browsers open in your head and you can't really focus on one or the other. Okay, so that's what I have for you this week, Linda. And I'm going to move on to Matalyn. We have some crazy stuff going on in Virgo, and it's going to get even crazier. And right when I said that, I literally just saw this like really bright orb, like right here. So I'm only gonna assume here that we have a visitor. She literally just came here right now, your mom. Your mom's like right here. Okay, so let's get into the crazy here really quick, and then we're gonna get into what is helpful here. So pretty much all week long, Mars and Mercury. Mercury is officially in Virgo now. Mercury is Virgo's ruling planet, by the way, in case you didn't know that. Both planets are in opposition, continue to be in opposition with Saturn, which also continues to be retrograde throughout the end of this week. That is going to change and lighten up to it just being Mercury in that opposition. So that is going to get easier as you get through the week, if that makes sense. Now, there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, Mars and Mercury are focused on those that support you. Saturn's focus is on those you love. So those people that you love should be the people that are supporting you. It does not always work like that. Knowing you and say your parents, okay, because your parents are the people that are they're legally required to support you, right? And I'm not talking financial support either. I'm talking any kind of support, emotional support, sometimes financial support, teaching you things that you don't know how to do. All of these different things they support you in. Okay, so I'm just using your parents as an example here. Okay, I'm not saying anything about your parents, right? But I know they were good parents. I was there for the most part. I was there. And, they are human beings and they make their mistakes, and it is what it is, right? Even though they were good parents, they're still human beings. They're not perfect, right? Remember what I think I said last week or the week before? One day you realize your parents are humans, just like everybody else. They screw up everything, just like everybody else. And it's kind of a hard thing to see this. But we need a reality check because, we're running around in this place thinking that our parents are perfect and, they know everything. And that's obviously not true. That's not true for Daniel's parents either. We really have no clue what we're doing. So most of the time anyway. So it comes down to this, right? When you are in need of support and they're busy taking care of their parents, for example, it can very easily go to this place where you're just like super offended. Like, I can't believe that they're not here to help me do this thing, right? And oh my God, and it can get to this really drama place. Okay, we are talking about Virgos here. And I know you're not an overly dramatic Virgo. I've never seen you be an overly dramatic Virgo. That doesn't mean you're not. I've just never seen it. And there's probably a good reason why I've never seen it. Your mom literally made you terrified of me when you were little for years. You just sit there in the corner and stare at me like, oh my God, she's going to grow wings and like fly at me or something. It's crazy, right? I've never seen you do that. That doesn't mean you don't. Okay, we all do, and females especially are like really, really bad at this over dramatic overreaction, right? So I feel like what's coming up or what could come up this week is something similar to that. You need something, you need it right now. There's nobody there to help you. You're just kind of sort of stuck having to figure it out on your own. Let me tell you how many thousands of times that has happened to me, because it is what it is, In fact, it's happened so many times to me that I've just gotten used to not asking anybody for help because it's just easier for me to deal with it by myself, right? So if I can, of course, there are certain things that's not the case, right? So basically, bottom line here is that this is less about the situation and more about your reaction to it. Okay, your responsibilities are your responsibilities, their responsibilities are their responsibilities. Just because they're your parents does not mean that that they are required to drop everything to help you now, because you're an adult, right? So that doesn't mean that they should never help you again, but you just want to make sure that you're not reacting to something in the wrong way. If your parents were like, you're 18, I don't have to anymore, that's a different story. Go ahead and react to that. That's just wrong. Okay. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a situation where you really need something and they're just not available. And you've got to figure it out on your own. And honestly, you're better off in that position. As annoying as it is in the moment, you're better off in that position, because your parents and I and Uncle Dave, our generation, we were what are called feral children. That means that nobody was paying attention to what we were doing. Okay. You guys are like micromanaged children. We were like feral children. Nobody was paying attention to what we were doing. I mean, think about it. Your parents are like towards the end, they're like the younger kids, right? So like there were so many kids before them that the parents were just like exhausted and just let these kids do whatever they wanted, right? Your uncle and I were the oldest kid. So because we were the oldest kids, our parents tried, but we were just too smart for them. We outwitted them at every corner, right? The point is that there was something fantastic about being feral children. We learned so much because we had to go and figure it out. There was nobody teaching us how to do this stuff. I didn't have anybody teach me how to do a home loan, how to do taxes. I had to figure all that stuff out on my own. And while it's scary to do, I think that I would prefer it the way that I grew up, as opposed to being a very hands-on micromanaged children, which you and my children were, because we wanted to change that. We didn't want to create feral children, and it's not safe in this world to have feral children anymore. But we wanted to give our children everything, and we overloaded them with information, which half of it they didn't hear. And I'm sure you can relate to that, right? So basically, this is one thing that may be coming up this week. The other thing is, and this is actually fantastic, is Mars's trines with Jupiter and Uranus, which are focused on your financial relationship, your relationship with your money. It's true, we have a relationship with our money. When we don't have a relationship with our money, money just comes and goes and comes and goes. And it seems like we're stuck living from paycheck to paycheck forever, okay? One of the worst possible things that you can do, and this is unfortunately the drawback for us being feral children, is we weren't taught this, okay? One of the smartest things that you can do right now is to look into investing, saving, retirement, anything that allows your money to make money for you, okay? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to put the money in there, but you're looking at this from a completely different place. You're not just looking at making money to pay the bills. I mean, that is important, but you're also looking at what is your relationship with money. Is it that you're always broke? That's not a good relationship with your money. And these, of course, are mindsets that we pick up as we grow up, right? Whereas if you and nothing against your parents or grandparents, but they both sort of lived in that state of paycheck to paycheck. There was no money set aside for later. There is no retirement money. This is all stuff that, yes, it's not going to work out for them, so it's not going to work out for you either. These are things that you want to look into. I know you're probably focused on something big right now. That doesn't mean that you can't incorporate at least making the appointment to sit down and talk to somebody about it, okay? The more you can build your financial future now, the easier it's going to be for you in the long run. And you never know. You might actually be able to retire early if you think about it. Also, I'm just being I'm just being told to tell you this. This might be good information for you. It might be good information for a friend of yours if they're looking, okay? You get into, not Winco, okay, but Rayleigh's, one of those grocery stores that is unionized. And this is why you want to do that, because they take care of your retirement. They pay for your training. They take care of everything that you need in order to be successful in that place. And if you go to a place like, say, Rayleigh's, for example, you can move that job anywhere. So if you choose, I'm not seeing that you're leaving Reading, but if you ever choose to leave Reading, you transfer from one Rayleigh's to another. So it's something to think about. And there's a lot of different things that you can do within that space, if that makes sense. So it could be annoying and really, really difficult, or it could be just annoying. It's really up to you in terms of where you want to take that. All right. So that's what I have for you, darling. And I am going to move on to, I think I'm moving on to Glennis. Yes, I am. Lovely, 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 lovely. No planets. Nothing, no planets in Libra. I'm like, what is your sign? No, I was looking at it. I just couldn't get it out of my mouth. No planets in Libra this week at all. We had the sunlight. I'm sorry, we had the moon last week. That was enough. We're not doing that anymore. We do continue to have Ceres influencing Libra in a very interesting way, actually. And that way is Ceres is known as the Great Mother. In mythology, she was a mother to a lot of the gods, if that makes sense. And I think that's why she's the Great Mother, because she mothered so many people. And Ceres' influence, even though Libra is all about you, it's focused on self, Ceres is bringing that trauma place into it, our inner closet, the space where we stuff all the emotional stuff that we don't want to deal with, and we sort of shove it all in that closet and then shove that door until it clicks, because as soon as you unclick it and open it, all that crap's going to fall out, right? And you know what that looks like when all that crap falls out. Everything, you're just crying everywhere. It's a miserable, it's horrible. Everybody hates it, right? So I prefer to open that door when I'm not in public, which is difficult. If I never open that door and something triggers it, boom, that door is opening and it's all falling out all at once, right? I feel like Ceres' influence in this is very interesting because it's sort of looking at that space from a maternal caretaking position. So it's like you're mothering yourself in a way by taking yourself through this journey, if that makes sense. And of course something's going to come up to trigger it. It almost always does. We don't open that closet just because, right? Usually we're triggered and kind of forced to open that closet. So I do see that as being a possibility. But I also feel like it's almost like I'm seeing you sitting there going, why am I like this? Why do I keep doing this? Right? It's just like, why am I like this? And this alone is a beautiful opportunity to be able to kind of sort of look at why you're doing this. Why do you keep repeating these patterns, so to speak? And understanding why you are doing that helps you to let go of that root and sort of send it away so that you don't feel you are stuck with it. I think that's the biggest problem that people have is I keep hearing, and I hate hearing it, this is just the way that I am, and I'm not going to change. That means you made the choice not to change. That does not mean that you can't change, like, some sort of God just came down and wrote it on stone. Glennis is stubborn. I'm just using this as an example, by the way. And I'm not saying you're stubborn. Glennis is stubborn, and that's never going to change. Okay. I'm stubborn. I have always been stubborn. But I also can change that, or I can use that stubbornness in the right way, or I can use that stubbornness in the wrong way. It is 100% all up to me. So it is 100% all up to you. I'm also seeing a typewriter, and I'm sitting in front of a typewriter. And while a typewriter is kind of weird to think of you sitting in front of a typewriter these days because we don't really use them very often. To me, this is about sitting down and writing your truth. There's also the possibility of you writing something that you're going to publish later, but there's a lot of creativity that has been stifled that just wants to come out. Venus retrograde, be damned. This is your time, and it's sort of milling about in your brain. It's time to put it on paper. Let me share with you, this has been going on with me for years, okay? It is not going to go away until you let it out. Okay, and that's what that means. So yes, Venus is retrograde. Yes, that's your ruling planet. Yes, it affects you. No, it doesn't mean that, oh, well, my creativity might be stifled, so I shouldn't start it now. Actually, this is a perfect time to start it now because it's reversing what you've been doing, which is avoiding it. And now it's time to just kind of sort of put it out there. Don't worry about whether or not anybody's going to read it. Don't worry about whether or not you're going to make any money off of it. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just do it. Just put it out there. This day and age, it's so super simple to do it. It literally takes 10 minutes to publish a book. Literally 10 minutes. That includes making the cover. That's it. Or you're just writing this for you, writing this legacy for your children, your grandchildren, what have you. It's time. I'm just your guide is saying it's time. So that's what I have for you. And I'm going to take a little break really quick. And then I will be back with the rest of the readings. Okay, moving on to Regina. We've got no planets in Scorpio or Libra this week, which is definitely a plus considering what we've been going through. You know, there's just so many planets that are spread out. So anytime you, especially in the fixed signs, anytime you do have planets in Scorpio, it's really going to affect everything else that's kind of going on. And you don't want to be a part of that. No, I hope you're enjoying blasting your music, by the way. I literally, last week, I think it was actually, or this last weekend, I had to go home and it is like hot as at home, okay, like the nasty, really gross ones. All right. I mean, like literally, my husband like pulled into the driveway of our house and opened the door, and it's like the heat came in and strangled you. It was so bad, which is why I'm spending most of my time at my office where it's so much nicer here. Anyways, on my way back in on Sunday, I was like, oh yeah, she's got the right idea. And I did the whole drive. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. I just blasted got some Metallica in there, got some Korn in there, just the stuff that makes you wanna, yeah. To me, I have to say it revs me up. And literally I came flying in here on a like energy high because of it. But at the end of the day, that same stuff will just calm me down too. It's really bizarre. And if you're not a metalhead, you just don't get it, and that's okay. It's okay. It is okay. So I hope you're still doing that because honestly, I mean, that's like, to me, music, and that kind of music specifically, is one of those things that really, it grounds me. It's people who are not into it don't understand it, but it really does. It grounds me. It helps me focus. It puts me in the right energy mode, regardless of what energy mode that I need, and honestly, I have a lot of aggressive tendencies, believe it or not. If you didn't catch the live yesterday, go and take a look at the video about an hour and 30 minutes and you'll see what happened. It was kind of crazy. I'm quite proud of myself that I handled it in the way that I did, and not my OG hood way that I would normally have dealt with things, which is to hunt this person down and rearrange their face. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. Anywho, focus continues to be on the past for Scorpio. Focus is on self for Libra. We do still have Ceres influencing Libra, which is influencing our trauma space. So to have that sort of trauma space focus with the past focus. And Ceres is known as the great mother. So there's a very sort of maternal influence that's pulling this old stuff out that's being triggered. So I feel like there's a couple of things that are coming up with this for you. One, sometimes when you're at work, there are certain personalities that are triggers for a reason, because they're triggering old behaviors that you've dealt with in the past. It's like being thrown back in your face. And while you're really good at not reacting to it as a trigger, I feel that the next step here is to take that home with you for a few minutes to kind of understand where that trigger comes from, so that it's easier next time you have that kind of reaction to not get triggered quite so much, if that makes sense. And it's not just the people that you're dealing with. I feel like this is specifically coming from somebody you are working with. So this is somebody that you deal with every single day. It's just this personality. It gives you the creepy creeps, if that makes sense. It really just feels very similar to an influence that you dealt with in the past that was really traumatic for you, really painful for you in some way. And this is not the same thing, although it seems like the same thing. But this is also an opportunity for you to deal with that sort of personality, whereas you may not have been able to do anything about it before, because of the circumstances, because of who they were, because of their age, what have you. And we have talked about briefly some of the things that you've gone through in this job, and the difficulties, and them constantly calling you into work, even though you're off that day and you're not supposed to be working. So I feel like healthy boundaries are really something that you need to start considering. And the thing with boundaries is, and people always say, well, I tried to put boundaries on this person and it didn't work. Well, that's because you only tried one time. You have to stick to your boundaries, and you have to keep reminding them, these are my boundaries. And you have to keep reminding them that this is how it's going to be from now on. And you have to keep reminding them, and they're going to dance all over them. I've been putting boundaries on my mother for about 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Oh my God. 10 years. It seems like 10 lifetimes, not 10 minutes. 10 years. And she's still dancing on them. She's still trying to get around them. She's still hoping that I'm going to forget or just go back to the old way, because so many people enabled her before me, including myself. I enabled her for 20 years before I said, bitches, I'm not doing this anymore. Right. So basically, yeah, she keeps dancing on them. She's going to continue to keep dancing on them, because that's what she knows. She's not going to change her behavior. She's not going to improve, obviously. Otherwise, it would have happened by now. The only thing she knows is to try to get around what I have set up. And that will never change. And that's never going to change with your people at work. So you have to keep reminding them, no, I'm not coming in on my days off. That's an example. No, I'm not coming in on this day off because I have other plans. No, I'm sorry. I can't work longer because I have other plans. Even if your plans are going home, putting on your PJs, popping a bowl of popcorn, and watching a movie, you deserve to do that, right? I feel like society has given way too much stress on selfishness and being selfish. Like we're supposed to sacrifice ourselves for others. And that's not true. We are supposed to be of service to others. That does not mean sacrificing ourselves either. There's a really big difference. And the minute you get that difference, it really changes your whole world. your whole outlook on the world, your whole outlook on life. I mean, seriously, it's freaking crazy. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that I feel like, because I know you mentioned that you're in your mother's house. You haven't really been able to make it your house yet. You haven't had the time. I haven't had the energy. Totally get all that. But I think that there's another thing that's playing into this a little bit, and that is that ripping that band-aid off and just going through this stuff is not going to be easy. It's going to bring up a lot of triggers again, and it's going to bring up a lot of past stuff that maybe you don't want to deal with. And I get it. I actually had 2 boxes of, I didn't even know what it was, in my closet of my dad's for like, I don't know, 3 years after he died. They were just, this is just a box of his stuff, and it was given to me. And, I avoided it because I couldn't go through the box, I didn't know what was in the box. So not knowing what was in the box was like, it could be anything that's going to trigger me. And I think it was the pandemic when I had nothing to do, when I was just like, okay, I'm going to finally go through these damn boxes. And of course, what I found, they were full of pictures. It was 2 boxes of pictures. And there was actually some fun going through those pictures. I found pictures of my grandparents when they were dating and when they got married, and stuff that I hadn't ever seen before, which was cool. And then, pictures that my dad had taken of various different people. And, there was a few pictures of, my family and my kids. But overall, this was just, more his life that I wasn't connected to. But the bulk of the pictures, literally half, was like my grandma and my dad were like 2 peas in a pod. Okay. They were the epitome of, let's take a whole roll of pictures of what these mountains look like while we're driving past them. Okay. No people in the pictures. No, I mean, I literally was just like, it was. The point is that I'm trying to get to, of course, I tossed it all. I did kind of feel bad at first. And then I was like, no, I'm not holding on to this. That might have been important to you. It's not important to me, kind of a thing. And it does feel bad when you're getting rid of things that belong to somebody else. But at the same time, whether they wanted me to hold on to those things or not is neither here nor there. Okay. It's my choice to cart this stuff around. And eventually it's going to get tossed anyways when it gets down the line to somebody who can't connect to it. And they're like, yeah, I'm not holding on to this. I don't even know what this is, right? Just like all the pictures that my grandparents took of all these people that I had never met, I'm not going to hold on to pictures of people that I don't even know who they are, right? So I feel like part of that is what is sort of getting in the way of you being able to go through these things, is almost like a fear of what you're going to find and how you're going to react to it, and then what you're going to do with it once you find it, if that makes sense. I think it's important for you to lighten that load, because being at home is not the safe and secure and comfortable place that it needs to be for you, if that makes sense, because you're surrounded by all of these things. And whether your mother wanted you to or didn't want you to or what have you is neither here nor there. It's your place now. It should be yours. And the point is that in order to make it yours, you have to go through all of these things that, yes, may be triggering for you. You don't have to do it all right in one spot. You don't have to do it all in one day. You don't have to, I mean, yes, it would be easier to just rip that band-aid off and get rid of all of it at once. You don't want to do that either, because there are some things in there that you do want to keep that are important to you for whatever reason. But honestly, I feel like this is really the biggest thing that's holding you back from being able to rearrange this place into something that's functional for you, if that makes sense. So maybe think about that this week, and think about a box or 2 that you can go through and get rid of some things. Once you get started, Yes, it's overwhelming because there's so much of it, but once you get started and you're not thinking about how much it is, you're just thinking about, I'm going to get this box done and this box done, and I'm cleaning out this cabinet on this day. It just gets done. And yes, you could do it as quickly as you want to, you could do it as slowly as you want to, but not doing anything is just keeping it exactly the same. And that's, I think, which it's like energetically it's pulling you down, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Theresa, no planets in Scorpio, which is a good thing, honestly, with all the stuff that we got going on and all the other fixed signs. Not having planets in Scorpio is definitely where we want to be. We had the moon last week, so we don't have to deal with that this week, which is really good. Focus is on the past, and I feel like there's a couple of things coming up with this for you. One, there's a lot of memories, like you're flooded with a lot of past memories that probably have to do with your mom, honestly. In terms of remembering her for who she was, when she wasn't in the situation that she's in right now. I'm not sure what is coming up to trigger this necessarily, if there's another episode that's happening or what have you. But I feel like it's literally, at least for one day, it's just like a flooding of these memories, if that makes sense. With or without a trigger, although I feel like there's a trigger there somewhere, if that makes sense. I also kind of feel like part of this trigger is, I want to say that somebody in your family is sort of, I don't want to say accusing because that's not really the word that I want to use here, but it's almost like they've said that you did something that you didn't do. And this is what's triggering. It's like you're going back in your mind to remember what actually happened, and then all these other memories just kind of sort of flood in. Honestly, you don't need to prove what did happen or didn't happen, because I feel like this situation is like somebody lashing out in anger. They're just throwing an accusation out there, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. Um, because in this situation, you can show all the proof that you didn't do it in the world, and this person's just going to come up with something else. Kind of a feeling. This is them going through their mess, trying to put that mess on your front door. So your job is to make sure that they cannot put their mess on your front door. Bottom line. Okay. You love them. That's fine. You can love them. You don't need to deal with their mess. You don't need to deal with their problem. You have enough stuff to do. So if you choose to assist a little bit, that's fine. But this is not your responsibility. We're going to put it like that. The other thing that I feel is coming up around this situation is, this is the same old BS that you've always dealt with this person. And I feel like there's an element of, you've always hoped that they would get it. You always hope that they would grow up. You always hope that they would start looking for things in a mature way instead of the immature way that it seems to be being looked into. The bottom line here is that I just actually went through this maybe a few weeks ago. Actually, the last time we talked on the phone, that day I went through something similar to this, and really came to a hard realization that this person that I have been dealing with my whole life is never going to change, never going to grow up, never going to stop causing drama and a problem and being immature and all of the different things that take place around that. And the release of that was amazing. Let me tell you, amazing. With the Venus retrograde going on a week after that happened, literally, this was like T-minus 1 week to this Venus retrograde. And I realized that I loved her, and I could love her and not deal with her anymore, not allow myself to hold myself back because of her anymore, not putting that responsibility on her anymore. and not necessarily putting up with their crap anymore either. You can love somebody and not like them, and it's okay to do that, because you got to love yourself too, enough to not have somebody put yourself in the position to have somebody constantly putting this crap on your doorstep. So I feel like, I don't want to say that this is going on all week long. I will say that it probably is going to come up and then be present in your mind for a couple of days. But once you come to terms with the fact that you can love this person, but not put up with them anymore, things do get a little bit easier. And of course, you can focus on what you need to focus on. So it's not coming in to take over your focus on what you need to do. The last thing that I have for you is, ew, candy corn. And I don't, okay, well, you're a Scorpio. So you're, maybe it's a Halloween thing or a birthday thing. I can't stand candy corn. Maybe you like it. That's totally fine if that's your thing. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of it, but I feel like also there's different layers to the candy corn with different colors and different layers. They also look like little those things that they put out in parking lots, the little orange cone thingies. Okay, I'm seeing a block. Something is blocked. It could be a creative block. It could be something to do with this project that you're trying to get along, to get through, or it could be that this whole situation is blocking you from moving forward on that. Either way, best to work through it. Once you work through it, put it to bed, put it in its place, do what you got to do with it. The blocks kind of sort of take care of themselves, if that makes sense. And I keep getting these candy corns though, and this sense of fall, which is, we're nowhere near that yet. I mean, we're getting there, but we're nowhere near that yet. So I feel like maybe that will present itself come October, the month that the candy corns are prevalent, which I do know is your birthday. But I feel that there might be a little bit more to it. So we're going to leave that there. That's what I have for you. And I'm moving on to Jillian. No planets in Scorpio this week. Yay. Focus continues to be on the past. I find it interesting, actually, the focus has been on the past for the last couple of weeks with what you're going through with the anniversaries of your dad, his birthday, his passing day. I'm sure that brings up a lot of memories of the past around that, which definitely makes some sense. But I also feel like this is more of an exploratory thing for you, that you're not just looking at the good times you're missing now because he's not here, but also really doing kind of like a self discovery thing, if that makes any sense at all. It's like going back and looking at the things that you've gone through in a completely different way. An unhealed person looks back at their life and justifies everything that they've ever done. A healed person looks back at their life and says, okay, it's kind of screwed up there. Glad I took care of that. I still have some issues or hangups with this situation, which I haven't quite taken care of yet. So I do want to take some time to work on that. And it's a process that we go through for the rest of our lives, in all honesty. Does it mean that, like, if we go through the process, like, life is easy from then on out? Absolutely not. That's not how it works, unfortunately. What it does do, though, is you remove a lot of the roadblocks that you could potentially be putting in front of yourself. as you're going through your healing process. So it's not quite so difficult. Life isn't quite so difficult when you start the healing process, but it is still difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. It's life. We're not here to have a good time. I mean, yes, we are, but that's not the only reason why we're here. We're here to learn. And in order to learn, we got to go through some pretty rough shit in order to get it. So just like that situation that we all went through, that one time where there was words said and they were not pleasant, and then I intervened, which I probably shouldn't have, and there was more unpleasant words exchanged, and then you came to terms with the fact that this isn't how you want to live your life, and you made the choice to change it. It's a big deal, right? Now you have your family back, you have the relationships back, you're owning your own responsibility in your own shit. And that is more important than anything, right? Because most people in this world are not owning their own responsibility. Those girls you were talking about at work that are constantly doing the little drama thing and the stupid shit, those bitches will probably never own their own responsibility. They're constantly going to be pointing the finger at somebody else. And you know enough people who do that to know that this does not work for them, but that's their issue, not yours. So this is not about dealing with people like that. That's about making sure that you are the opposite of that. Always. That you're always owning your own responsibility in a relationship, in a situation, in a scenario that you happen to be in at the time. When you own your own responsibility to it, that's when you start to have control over your part of the situation. The reason I'm saying this is because I feel like this may come up again this week in some way, shape, or form around one of your relationships. And this could be the relationship with your boyfriend, could be your mom, your grandma, your sister, could be at work, could be in multiple different places. So the bottom line here is that you want to make sure that this situation, if it's a situation that's reoccurring all the time, that you're constantly having this problem, you need to change the way you react to it. They're not going to, right? But when you change the way you react to it, you also change their reaction, because all of a sudden they don't know how to react. So they don't. And it makes a huge difference, not because you're winning, not because you're losing, not because they're getting it, but because it's quicker to end it, if that makes sense, especially when it involves drama and people just being dramatic like that. I literally have gotten to a point in my life where I am too old for that shit, right? And I have a sneaking suspicion you're going to be too old for that shit way earlier than I was. Like, maybe by the time you might even be teetering on too old for that shit right now. And that's okay, right? Because the bottom line here is that success in life is not measured by the people that are there to support you. The success in life is measured by what you're willing to do to get there. And the support system that you have really is neither here nor there. I think a lot of people are talking about, we have too many people talking about what other people are doing for them, and that's their hang up. But when we hear that, we automatically think, well, no one's doing that for me. I must not be worth anything. Well, no, that's not what that means. Yes, it might mean you have a lousy support system, but I've also, in my experience, I have seen that when people start getting taken away in terms of whether I'm supported or not, that means I have to look at me. What do I need to do to support me through this, if that makes sense? The other thing that I keep hearing is that there's certain things that you're not putting up with anymore, which I love. It's like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm not putting up with that crap anymore. And this is not about cutting people out of your life. Everybody is like, oh my God, cut the toxic people out. You can't freaking cut toxic people out all the time. I still have to deal with my mother because in order to see my grandmother, who I love, I got to deal with my mother. If I cut her out, I cut this person that I love out too. And that's not something that I'm willing to do. So unfortunately, that's what I'm saying. You can't always cut the toxicity out, but you don't have to deal with it either. I learned from that whole situation before that I really do love your mom, but I don't have to like her. I don't have to deal with her. I don't have to help her. I don't have to do anything for her, but I do still love her. It sounds weird. I will always send her love. I will always send her loving thoughts. I will continue to ask my guides to help her. But I personally have learned my lesson in terms of my experience with her is always going to end the same. And that's really the bottom line here, is that when you're dealing with other people, yes, humans need humans, but we have gotten ourselves to a point where we have decided that if we don't have humans to be there for us, to help us, to drop what they're doing, to save us, to wipe our butts for us, we can't do anything. And that's bullshit. Okay, it's absolute bullshit. You want to be successful, it's up to you to make that decision. You got some ideas in there, and I know that it's going to take some work, and it's probably going to take some money, but it is worth it in the end for you to do it. So if you keep getting pulled in this direction, there's a reason why you're getting pulled in that direction. Just do it. Your dad keeps saying, just do it. Like the Nike commercial, just do it. So that's what I have for you, darling. I'm going to move on to Peg. Yes, I am moving on to Peg. No planets in Sagittarius this week. We ended with the moon last week, had the moon in there for a couple of days. We're not dealing with the moon again this week because that was last week. Focus is on the mind and how you think. First of all, I might have said this last week. I don't remember if I did, so I'm just going to say it again. Totally saw that you're on Blog Talk. I think that's awesome. Loving seeing you back out there in that public platform again. You probably were there and I just haven't seen it, and I'm sorry about that. The truth is that I don't go on Facebook unless I have to these days because people are crazy, okay, and I am just done with the crazy. But besides that fact, I think it's awesome and amazing that you're doing that. And I see some ideas milling about in your head that are things that you might want to implement. Again, write them down if you haven't written them down yet as possible avenues to quote unquote explore, if that makes sense. I feel that using the word explore takes some of the pressure off of it. So it's not like you have to do this right now, right? You're just exploring the possibility of seeing what could be happening, which the energy is quite different. Exploration to me is sort of wandering around. It's actually the Sagittarian energy, right? It's sort of wandering around to get a little information, to see what's to see if it's going to work out for you, or is there any way that you could change it, maybe improve on it, maybe make it better, what have you, right? But I'm also feeling like I keep hearing the words time to get serious. And I'm not saying that you're not serious, that you've never been serious, because that would be absolutely wrong and a lie. You are very serious about what you're doing, but I keep hearing it's time to get serious. And so I feel like this might have to do with some of the plans that you've been thinking about. You need to look at them a little bit more seriously, if that makes sense. Get them out of that idea place and put them down into something that you can work with or plan around or make a goal with or what have you. It's really important that that you get the ball rolling on that while you explore the possibilities of those things. I'm also seeing somebody, the word that just came to me is infiltrating. Okay, and this might be two people, because I'm seeing somebody that's very helpful and I'm seeing somebody that's infiltrating. Okay, infiltrating means they're not welcome. They're just walking in like, hello, this is your house. I'm just going to walk into it. Okay. And I feel like these two people may be together. So it's like the energy of one person is like, yeah, I can work with this. And the other one is like, absolutely not. I'm afraid that the infiltrating personality is something that you're going to have to walk away from, because this personality feels like yet another one of those people that just want to use you for what they can get out of you. But there is no value to what you do, if that makes sense. So yeah, don't let anybody infiltrate your lair, as they say, Dr. Evil says in Austin Powers. I'm seeing you with tools in your hand, a wrench, a hammer, a screwdriver, and a saw. Don't ask me what kind. It's I don't know what kind of saw it is. It's not like the regular saw. It's like the one that has the little blade. It's in the thing that goes up like that. Skill saw, maybe, if that's what that is. This is what just popped in my head. Anyways, to me, I obviously I'm not seeing you like building an ark or anything like that, but to me, you're building something, or you're working on building something currently right now. And you have all the tools to do it. You're worried about the fact that you don't have the right tools to do it. You have all the tools to do it. You just need to get it going. You just need to start implementing what you need to implement in order to get it off the ground. So it's not to say that you're doing nothing but thinking about it and not doing anything. I feel like you have been to a certain extent, but this is more of a, you've got the idea, you've made the plan, you've got the tools, you just need to start, basically. That's what your guides are saying, anyways. And that's what I have for you, Peg. I'm going to move on to Mama Sherri. No planets in Sagittarius this week. Focus is on the mind and how the mind works. Two things come up with that. First of all, all right. I keep getting these ideas. You get this idea in your head, and then I hear you go, "Oh, that's such a stupid idea. I'm not doing that." And then another idea pops in and goes, "Yeah, that's just not going to happen right now. There's too many reasons why I can't do that." And then another idea comes up and you're like, "Yeah, that would be cool, but maybe if I was younger." I mean, there's always an excuse as to why you can't do it. It's actually like when we were talking yesterday, we were on the phone yesterday, we were talking about, I'm looking for studio apartments, and this is like $15.95, and you're like, too rich for my blood, like right away. A lot of people say that. A lot of people are like, how could you possibly even think about the concept of paying that much for a studio apartment? Well, because that's how much it costs. Okay. And when we go, that's too rich, or I don't want to pay that, or that's too much money, what we're saying is that we don't have the oomph to get up and get it. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm going to get that damn studio apartment. You mark my words. I'm going to show you. I'm going to get that studio apartment, because my mentality is, if I want it, I know what I need to do to get it. I'm not waiting on anybody else to get it for me, obviously. And that's also a mentality that you want to be aware of. You're on your own. You're in a space where it's easy for you to be on your own. That doesn't mean that it's a good space for you either. And implementing what you need to implement in order to put yourself in a place where you can get to where you need to go is very important, because you can't just stay where you are. And you taught me that, not just in a physical, you can't always live their way, but in a, if you don't stretch yourself, you always stay in the same place, right? And this is where it's really important to make sure that you're not falling into old mindsets when you know better than that, if that makes sense. You're also helping me to understand that this is something that happens all the time. So you never get to a point where you're like, that's it, I can highly function no matter what, because something's going to come in and take that carpet rivet right out from underneath your feet and make you fall again, right? And every time you fall, it does take longer to get back up. I totally am understanding that now. Thank you very much for that lesson. Not saying that you're doing anything wrong, but stop putting roadblocks in front of yourself. That's not something that you were doing before my dad passed, and it should not be something that you're doing now. I get it. You don't want to pay $15.95 for rent. That's okay. I understand that. But it's not too rich for your blood, because if you really wanted it, I know damn well you would get it, because I know who you are and you know who you are. And that's what's really important, right? And that's what I have for you this week. And finally, Alyssa, we are at the end here. Pisces, all kinds of craziness going on in Pisces this week, especially because the moon moves into Pisces this week. We're actually going to end the week, it looks like. Not quite end the week, but the moon will be there towards the end of the week, I should say. And the moon is moving into a conjunction first with Saturn, which is in opposition with Venus, which is retrograde, Mercury and Mars, and the moon on Thursday moves into conjunction and adds this emotional influence to this opposition here. Saturn's focus is on those you love. Venus, Mercury, Mars, their focus is all on those that love and support you. And I feel like lately you've been kind of feeling like you're doing more of the supporting than, say, the elders are being supportive of you, if that makes sense. It's like you're, in some cases, sometimes you feel like you're the support system when it should be the other way around. And it kind of makes things a little bit difficult. But at the same time, with Saturn being retrograde, it's a reminder not to take on responsibilities that don't belong to you. Okay. First of all, we have this weird mentality going on in the world that with parents, right? Parents are like, yeah, I raised my kids, so, now that they're adults, it's their job to take care of me. Okay. First of all, no, it's not. I'm gonna say it is. When it's time to take care of them, like they physically can't take care of themselves, then yes, it is absolutely their responsibility to take care of their parents. But before then, I don't think so. And while this is not quite as extreme as things that I've been through, like, say, as soon as I turned 18, my mother was like, okay, you're an adult now. All the minimal stuff that I did to take care of you, you have to pay me back for the rest of your life now. You're not in that situation. But there are certain things that just keep being laid on your lap. And while you don't want to say, this isn't my responsibility, and I don't want to take responsibility for this, it's really important that you lay down some boundaries to make sure that you're not being handed responsibilities that don't apply to you, if that makes sense. On Friday, when the moon moves into conjunction with Neptune, we're having a completely different conversation here. Yes, Neptune and the moon is in opposition with Mars. So again, we create that sort of I'm not getting support when I need it situation, but we're also adding the moon's influence into Neptune's grand sextile with Pluto and Uranus, which continues through this week and probably will for several weeks. Uranus's focus is on finances. Pluto's focus is on the home. And then, of course, we have the moon's influence there with Neptune's focus, which is right on the cusp of those you love and your day-to-day schedule. So in terms of money and expansion of money, I feel that what this is saying is to look at your schedule. Find times that you're available. Now, I go and say I don't have time for a lot of things. And the truth is that I do have time. I just don't want to put more into my schedule. Okay. But also, I have to look at it as if I want to be successful and make money, I have to open up those spaces for those opportunities. Right. So basically, bottom line is that, in this, I'm not saying that this is the way the situation is, but if you work at night for one person, you make enough money to survive, that's great, okay? But you could add a second person in there. You have time to add a second person in there. You have time to add a couple of people in there. You have time to take on like a part-time online gig, right? Customer service, remote customer service positions. These things are popping up all over the place. Basically, it's saying take a look at your schedule. And yes, it might be working now, but we need it to work from here on out, if that makes sense. So you're helping to help yourself to, be successful, to financially take care of yourself, because you don't want to rely on another person to do that. No matter how good they are at it, you run the risk of putting yourself in a situation where you can't take care of yourself, and then it becomes really, really bad. So this is not 1955 anymore. Men are not required to take care of us and financially take care of us after they die. It doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. So I always, every woman that I talk to, I'm like, look, you got to be in charge. You got to take care of your stuff. You got to make sure that you're financially set on your own and can survive on your own 2 feet without the assistance of another person. Because if you don't do that, you run the risk of putting yourself in a situation where you're going to need somebody to take care of you. And that's really a crappy place to be also. Because for whatever reason, every time it just seems that when you're needy, it becomes a problem for people that you didn't have a problem with before. It's just the way of how human beings react, if that makes sense. So I feel like this situation really is helping you to open up time to be able to make some extra income, whether that's to put it away to save it, whether it's to put it away for retirement, whether it's just to make sure that you have more than you need to pay your bills every single month. It doesn't matter. The point is that there is time to make some extra income to help make things a little bit smoother for you, if that makes sense. And that's what I have for you, darling. And that's what I have for everybody this week. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with the readings. I hope you enjoy them. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. I hope you guys have a great week. Make it a great week. Nobody can make it a great week better than you can. And I will see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.